All right, welcome into another edition of the Cut Pro Wrestling Podcast. My name is Randy Zellier from backsportspage.com, and thank you for making us a small part of your week. We are back. Happy Thanks. We're a week away from Thanksgiving. We have a couple episodes left before we get there, before we start gobbling up Gobbledygooker Survivor Series 1990 reference. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. You don't get more wrestling crap than that, ladies and gentlemen. So let's go with that. Special guest today. We're going back to the independent scene for a shorter episode with Robert Connelly. We discussed his path into pro wrestling, what he wants to accomplish, how he got here, and much more. Before we jump into our special interview with Robert Connelly, going back to the independent, as we like to call it. Man, news just broke. More releases from the WWE, AEW, cowboy shit celebration on AEW Dynamite with Bryan Danielson crashing the party, pretty much turning heel on Adam Hangman Page. And now we are setting up for a great main event down the line. Also, is anybody else as excited as I am about CM Punk and MJF? Man, that's going to be awesome. And Jay Lethal and Sammy Guevara tearing the down. I got to tell you, is there a much more improved wrestler in AEW than Sammy Guevara? And he's so young. He's not even scratched the surface yet. My God, if I would be drafting and building a promotion right now, Sammy Guevara would be my top 5 draft picks. There's not a doubt in my mind. I might be taking MJF in that top 5 too, to be one of my top heels, because find me a guy who's a better talker on the microphone right now than MJF. Other news coming out of Dynamite: Kenny Omega, a little banged up from Full Gear, will be sitting out for a little bit. The Bucks and Adam Cole had a little funny bit in the beginning. And the other news sort of coming out of Dynamite, look, I like Sheeta. I think Sheeta is an excellent female wrestler. Taking a loss to Nyla Rose, nothing to be ashamed of there. But I think it was just more of the timing of it. This is the first time we've seen her sort of go down in that sense. 51st, first female in AEW history to win 50 matches. Takes a loss from one of her big rivals who she's owned so far. So that's a big story. TNA, I keep calling him TNA. Wrestling has a show this weekend. It is Turning Point. I will tell you, it's going to be very, 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 very interesting to see now with more releases coming from the WWE. How many people not only show up at AEW, but how many show up at Impact? I'll tell you, John Morrison, Keegan Knox, Hit Row, Drake Maverick, Jason Riker, and Shane Thorne all released a few hours ago. This follows up with the Karrion Kross, Scarlett, Keith Lee, Eva Marie, Hit Rose, B-Fab, and more, all being released this month so far. All right. Again, special guest this week, Bobby Connelly. Let's take a listen and see how he got his career started and where he wants to go. And we'll be back after our interview with Robert Connelly. All right, back here, interview time on the Cut Pro Wrestling Podcast. With me now, Bobby Connelly.
Hey, how's it going?
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing well.
It's that awkward pause of, hey, how you doing, man?
It's everywhere I go into a room.
Me and you both. I like, the difference is, back when I was younger, I would jump into a room and be like, I'm here. And people would go, who are you? And I'd be like, we're at that point. You get more cheers. You get more cheers and boos than I would. You know, people, I get who the hell is this guy? At least they're like, oh, Bobby. Okay, Bobby, what are you gonna do to entertain? Like, so you have more pressure to deliver when you entertain. I'm a hit or a miss. I'm an hour. So listen, man. I gotta know, because I were just talking briefly before we came on, and you mentioned that you don't get to do a lot of these interviews. I'm taking great pride. This show has always taken great pride of trying to inform and tell the story of the guys who don't usually get to tell their story. So for you, what made you when did you fall in love with the pro wrestling business? What attracted you to it? How'd that happen for you?
I think it was around WWF when it was popular around 90s, because I've always been told, because I don't remember that far back, because I was always watching it since I was 2 years old. And one of the first characters that ever I can vividly remember was The Undertaker. I mean, of course, Hulk Hogan was popular and definitely more known, one of my favorites as a kid, but it drew me to it because of like someone like a Hulk Hogan or the Undertaker, or like these over the top style characters, Big Boss Man, like all those ones that kind of attracted me. And they all were able to, so what I'm looking for, like do very, like they were able to entertain very well. So it's like some of them, not saying those guys specifically, but some of them may not have been the great wrestlers, but they were definitely very entertaining and definitely could stick out to someone like me, especially at that age.
It's funny too. You mentioned the Undertaker and Hulk Hogan. I know I started watching 1989. My first time I ever watched wrestling was WrestleMania 5. So I'm being introduced to wrestling with Hulk Hogan and the Macho Man. So like you said, over the top characters. When for you did you stop falling in love with the over the top characters and start falling in love with the product in the ring?
I want to say once I realized what WCW was, because WCW, at least because I'm from like a small town in Virginia, it wasn't very prominent at the time until about the time till like around like mid 90s with like Nitro and all those ones. Like they were, but they weren't at the same time. So once I got to see something different outside of WWF and got to see WCW and saw like it was a completely different thing, especially with like Lucha Libre and Matt Russ, like all those things, like they attracted me a little bit more. So for a while, I would, and probably age at the same time as I'm a little bit older, I didn't like the over the top type stuff. So once WCW came around, I kind of didn't have many of those and was sticking to more what's happening in the ring. That kind of stuck out to me the most. That's when I started falling in love with that aspect of it.
And what age did you finally say, I want to start training and see if I can do this?
I mean, as a kid, I always said I want to be a wrestler, but it's just one of those things that kids say they want to do this, but then life takes them to a different path. I think like when I actually was like actually sitting down and being serious about it was about 13 or 14, because there was a wrestling school a couple hours from where I lived at the time. And I had friends in high school that got a chance to go and they were telling me about it and things like that. And I was like, that would be kind of a cool experience to go. So that was the time where I was like, maybe I should look into actually taking it seriously and finding places to train and work out and get my foot in.
You mentioned to me before that you were trained by the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant himself. What was it like training with Jimmy? Was the first time you stepped in the ring and took that bump, was that a little nerve-wracking?
It was, because it was at the time like a little after the first Tough Enough season, and you always hear them talk, and it was like right after they're talking like sore, I'm hurt. You see all these scratches on the rope. So when they were like, all right, let's see how you can take a bump, I was like, uh-oh. I forgot about that part. So that was it was definitely very nerve-wracking, because you just hear before going to all these horror stories as well, where it's like, if you land wrong, you can do this. You can get hurt, may never wrestle again. You just didn't know. So when he first told me to do it, I was like, all right, let's see how this goes. And it luckily came out really well.
and you started at the age of like 15, 16 years old, right?
Yes. I trained there like a month before my 16th birthday. And then it was like maybe about a year later, I had my first match.
It's funny. I was talking with Mike Bennett from ROH about this, and he was telling me like he did the same thing. He was training around that age, and I was just like, I was more shocked that, because I always thought you had to be 18 to train. So I was blown away by this. When you were 15 to 16 years old, were you intimidated by some of the guys that were in the class? Because you were 15 to 16 years old from a mindset, that's still very young to be in a grown man's business at that point.
Oh, 100% I was. Because most of the guys there had like a lot of experience, because so it would be like one of those classes you would run once a week on Sundays for about 4 hours. So a lot of the other guys, it wouldn't be like new class this day, anything like that. So when I came in, a lot of guys had some training, and you had guys who have been doing it for a few years, and some guys that were like decent size and big guys. So yeah, coming in at short and fat as I was at the time, it was definitely very intimidating to see all these guys, especially the way that they move, because some of the advanced stuff I couldn't do, obvious reasons. So seeing them to like kind of do all these spots and moves at the time, I was like, oh, they are really, really good. And I didn't know if I could. It was even like one of the mindsets, like, I think I made a terrible decision.
Do you have any memories of your first match? I know you had to wait almost a full year because the athletic commission. What was that? First, let's make it a two-part question.
Mm-hmm.
Your reaction when they gave you the okay that was you can get your first match into, and then your memories of the first match?
It wasn't that far from getting the okay to be able to do it. I think it was like probably from what I said, they said you should go out and do shows. I want to say it was like maybe 8 months in. Because in Virginia had an athletic commission, so I couldn't do anything at the time because I had to be 18 to get the wrestling license and all that stuff. So everyone's telling me, oh, you should go out there and find places like I was close to West Virginia, North Carolina. All those places didn't really have an athletic commission, kind of like Florida. You don't have an athletic commission. So you can kind of come and go as you please. It took me a little bit longer to actually find a show because I didn't know how to really search and look out there because the internet wasn't that big at the time. I mean, it was like early 2000s, like 2004 or 5. It was big, but not like as big as what we see it now. So I kind of did a little research, and I had another person that started around the same time with me. His name was BJ Strickler. He was wrestling. He actually did all the work and got a hold of a promotion and said, hey, they want to bring in a couple of guys. Do you want to come with me? I said, yeah, let's do it. So I was able to do it, and they were able to let me do it since there was no athletic commission at the time. And it was in West Virginia. So it was a couple hours from where I was at to get there.
So talk to me about the first match.
I didn't do anything. So I had to wrestle twice that night so I did a tag match with my buddy BJ Strickler, again, a company called tag team called Damage Incorporated. It was Big Nasty and Slayer. They were big guys, and I'm not that big. I'm at the time probably like 5'4". I was heavier set, but not in like the best way. So I think the only offensive move I got is I was able to slap him in the face. That was it. And I was okay with that because I was just like, if you would have seen me like the build up to that match, like backstage, I'm pacing like back and forth and all this stuff. I was like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. All right. You nervous? I'm like, yeah, just a little. So, and looking back, it's like, there wasn't that many people. There was like 100 or so. And I'm like, looking back, like, it wasn't that many. But when you're having your first one, it was impressive. And then I had to go out there for the main event because they did a Buckhouse Battle Royal. So they would treat it like WWE's Royal Rumble. But the catch is people had a weapon of some sort with them. So I brought like a cookie sheet, and someone brought in like a chain thing. So I was number 3.
And how long were you in there for?
I was in there for a while, but I didn't really do any offense.
Yeah.
I think I came in, like one of the guys from the tag match was in there, and then there was another guy. I think I ran in, took a clothesline. He hit me a few times. I'm struggling to grab this chain. He stops me, hits me once, and then throws me out. I think I might have been in for like 2 or 3 minutes. It wasn't very long.
It's an interesting first day of work. Let's just call it that in that sense.
It was. They were like, you want to use weapons? I'm like, no. Well, here you go. Okay.
So now let's fast forward a little bit. You've been in the business for close to 17 years now. Mm-hmm. And you've obviously had some different experiences. When you see younger people coming through the locker rooms, what advice do you usually give them?
I just always say, just make sure you always keep something up your sleeve when it comes in the ring. Cause I saw Undertaker tell a story, like it was on WWE's page where it was just like, well, once you start doing 450s and you do it enough, what do you have next? When you start doing handsprings and all these other flips and you start doing enough, everyone's like, well, we've seen it. What else do you got? So I always just try to tell people, keep stuff up your sleeve and only put it at a certain time if you're going to do it, because once you start doing it all the time, no one's going to care.
I mentioned to you in the information sheet that I always send out to everybody about, so just to get a good handle on it. I asked about some of your character traits and the gimmicks that you do. I saw the peanut butter jelly thing and stuff like that. Do you ever get nervous about being a character compared to a wrestler?
No, because I know how to incorporate it a little bit more. So like I do incorporate a lot of wrestling in it, but I still like to add some certain spots and comedy towards it. So like even the beginning thing, I may do a thing where I stomp on the guy's toe. We do a crisscross. I fool him, stomp on his toe again. Turns around and give him like an arm drag. So I can turn some comedy stuff and make it into wrestling to where it's not just strict character. Right. I do a good mix of it. And then most of the time, because if I'm doing that character, I get beat up all the time. So I mostly just had the guy beat up on me and then come back and do it that way. So like for me, it was hard at first because when I wasn't really that good in the ring, I had to do nothing but character because I couldn't hardly do a lot of other stuff just because I was new, I was nervous, any place I would go. now that I've been doing a little bit longer, I've been more comfortable to be able to do a little bit of both and mix it in correctly.
For you, I know you did a little extra work for WWE and Impact. What was it like to sort of see the television side of it? Being able to take a look around and say, okay, be doing the independents where you're wrestling and do a little bit of character work, but it's more about the match compared to take one, take two. This is the television aspect of it. What did you take away from the experience of working behind the scenes as an extra?
I was blown away by both Impact and WWE. Like when I did Impact, it was right around the time when Anthem took over. And it was kind of a shot in the dark because I knew people that worked at Impact. And it was one of the things they sent out feelers like, hey, we need somebody for this spot. You interested? I'm like, yeah, I could be there at this time. So I went there that day. So it was like 1:00. I found out that they needed people. And then it was like 6:00. All right, it's go time. And I was living in like around Daytona. So from Daytona to Orlando, where they were filming at Universal, it's a couple hours, especially trying to hit it on peak traffic time, was not an easy task to do. And but when you walk into the set, so I take that back a little bit. I did another time before that. I just wasn't used on TV. I was going to, but then they went with somebody else. But even seeing it from like that point to when I came back like 6-7 years later to see it for Impact, it was completely different. Even going to WWE, like how they have their setup was just amazing to me. And it kind of, and not in a bad way, but it kind of has the independent wrestling type feel, but just such more big product and much more different placements and how they're going to put things together. But sometimes some things change on the fly, and that reminds me a little bit of the independent scene a little bit.
Well, and catering. There's actually catering at both places.
Yeah, absolutely. There's only like a few places like independent wise that'll do catering, but that one I was just like, especially like when I went to WWE's, I was just like, I joked with people because they cut those promos about someone sticking in catering and things like that. And I'm like, what's the problem? This is great. This isn't bad.
I was about to say, this is like you're one of those things where you almost come back with your bag and you start filling. I'm like, I take some of this stuff with me. This stuff's really good.
So some people did that. Like we did SmackDown the next day and they had to go containers. I just see people plop them in. I'm like, all right, have a good day. Just leave right out the door.
For you, from a professional level, what goals do you have for yourself for the near future and maybe for 5-10 years down the road?
I mean, if I'm blessed enough to still able to keep doing this for all those years, I want to go somewhere full time. Like I've been able to have good time with Impact and good time with WWE where I've gotten good spots and exposures from those. But it's all those ones where people like, oh yeah, you're that guy, and then they go on with their life, which is fine. I was blessed enough to be able to do this and was able to do something I thought I would never do. I would like to be able to get a chance to be able to kind of show people like, hey, what I can do in the ring instead of just being like, hey, you run this, you were here for like 30 seconds or you were here for 10 minutes. But now I want to actually get in there and show people like, hey, you can actually do well in the ring. And it's like, yeah, I can.
Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate you giving me some time today. Let's plug your social media.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on Instagram mostly, but it's at Bobby.Fonta. I'm mostly on there all the time. I'll keep people up to date on like some shows I'm doing, maybe some things I'm doing around the area, try to stay active on there. I have a Twitter. I just don't really use it that often. It's just, I'm like always on Instagram.
I'm the same way. I don't like social media that much. That's just how I am.
I don't mind it. It's just there's so many things out there. So I'm just like, everyone's like, you got to have like all 6. I'm like, there's only 3 that I know of. And they're like, no, you got to have these ones. And I'm like, I can barely keep track of the 3 that I got now.
Well, listen, we appreciate it. Thanks for giving us some time today. And, well, good luck with the future, and we'll be following you.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me. Thank you very much.
All right, we're back here on the Cut Pro Wrestling Podcast. That was Robert Connelly here on the Cut, courtesy of backsportspage.com. Great to see what he's going to be doing in the future, and we wish him all the best of luck, as we do for all the independent talent that does come on the show. We have an open door policy here on the Cut. We welcome all talent, whether they're veterans, rookies, announcers, referees, or even fans. We like the mega fans. We'll take them too. So with that being said, don't forget to follow the show on all of our social media platforms. We're on Instagram. We are on Twitter. We are on Facebook. We are on every social platform, also on the podcast platforms themselves. Don't forget about Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple. We're on all of them. YouTube. Give us a 5-star review letter, or just give us a review. Let us know what you think. It doesn't have to be 5-star. It could be 1-star. Please make it a 5-star. We like good things. Please, please, please. I'd like to thank Andrew Fumey and the rest of my crew, Jamie, Alyssa, Jonathan, Austin, and Alexis, for helping out build this, keep building this show up behind the scenes. we're going to keep growing. And with that being said, we're going to see you next time here on the Cut Pro Wrestling Podcast.